So it's been about a year since we got the hidden treasure of Area Zero, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet expansion pass. And I have to say, this expansion pass kind of perplexes me. Because on one hand, it does a lot to improve Scarlet and Violet, and by itself is very, very fun, but also has some of Gen 9's big lingering issues, and doesn't really do anything to address them. Regardless, I still think these DLCs are super fun and introduced some really cool Pokemon, environments, and characters. And so today, I just wanted to take a quick look back at these DLC expansion passes and really look at what I thought about them. This video is entirely unscripted and it's just me giving my thoughts, but I realized that doing this alone would kind of be boring. So I actually have a few of my friends from the Pokemon community coming in today and giving their own thoughts on the DLC as well. So you guys are going to be listening to a bunch of people talking about what they thought about the hidden treasure of Area Zero, and then we're going to end the video off with my thoughts. So let's get into it.
Hey Pokemon Champions, I'm ChampionBlaze, and I definitely enjoyed the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc DLC because of what they did to really expand the story of Scarlet and Violet that we already had. Scarlet and Violet is already up there as one of the best Pokemon games in terms of storytelling, even rivaling that of Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, and those are some of the most beloved stories in the franchise. So to say that about Scarlet and Violet, despite not functioning properly, despite the graphics at times, and despite every problem they had, they are really great games when it came to the story, and especially when we talk about the Indigo Disc and how they tied back to the professors and Area Zero and explored the lore even further of Terrapagos. I think they did an incredible job with that. They really dug their heels in, sat down at the table with that pen and paper, and they really crafted a beautiful story. But what I love about the Teal Mask is that when you first arrive there, you think you're in Johto. It has such an air of familiarity to it, much like the Isle of Armor. The Isle of Armor, while, isolated in a water area and it's made up of these different isles and islands, it had a feel similar to that of Johto. Between the dojo that you get to stay in, the two towers of waters and darkness, it still had an air of familiarity to it, even though it's a part of Galar. And I love that for Kitakami, because you feel like you're back in Johto, and it's absolutely fantastic. And when it comes to the story for the Teal Mask, I really love how it lays kind of the groundwork for the story to be extended even further when it comes to the Indigo Disc. The Teal Mask definitely has its own stories, such as encountering the Blood Moon Ursaluna, which was absolutely fantastic because I don't think anyone was expecting to see some sort of connection to Pokemon Legends Arceus in a DLC, let alone, in Scarlet and Violet itself. So not only with connecting to Pokemon Legends Arceus in that way, I think they did a great job of having their own kind of self-contained story, and they're really giving these legendary Pokemon a lot of substance this generation. Even with the quests in order to catch these Pokemon, I think they did a marvelous job. Between the Ruinous Quartet that you can get in mainland Paldea, and then the Loyal 3 that turns out to have such an intricately woven story. You're led on this goose chase of Ogerpon is the bad guy and the Loyal 3 were kind of these heroes, but then it's kind of the reverse. The storytelling and then the curveballs are absolutely immaculate. I love the design of Kitakami, the Ogre Mountain that you get to go and explore. It was very expansive. It felt more open world than what we got in the Isle of Armor. And then when it comes to the Indigo Disc, now while the terrarium is very much enclosed and it's this one area, the areas that you can explore are pretty expansive despite being in just this one area. It was very fun, but I will admit that fun is kind of short-lived, because once you go through it once, you kind of don't need to go through it again, unless you're doing some sort of challenges like M&J TV and Pokemon 7 do on their channels. Whereas if you go back to the Teal Mask, because of how big and expansive it is, feeling like a mini region, it's a lot better in my opinion. I feel like the geography for the Teal Mask is better than that for the Indigo Disc, because the Indigo Disc, while I have not finished it, I do love that they put even more depth into the story over there, focusing on curing and focusing on Terrapagos, solving the mysteries of Area Zero. I think it was very beautifully well done, and I love how everything truly does come full circle. And I gotta say, what I really did enjoy the most was how you had to piece the story together, really pay attention. These games make you pay attention. There's so many details that you can overlook. There's so many details that actually need to be remembered as they are relevant to the story later on. Maybe not immediately, which I think is great because that's something the original games were known for doing, is giving you these details early on that really didn't become important until later, or they were gradually raised up to a high level of importance. And I think that was great. The Scarlet and Violet, the DLCs, it was all masterful storytelling. And the very ending with Terapagos, from what I've seen, and with Kieran and with Briar, the professors, it's absolutely gotta be a 10 out of 10. Just from the reviews I've seen and from what everyone else has been saying, I absolutely enjoyed these DLCs, and I can't wait to see what Pokemon has in store for us, especially with Legend ZA on the horizon.
Greetings trainers, KuroBlitz here, and let me tell you about my own thoughts when it comes to the DLCs for Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. Overall, they're not bad, but realistically, they don't feel innovative or necessary at all to begin with. And it's not because such was done before with the ones from Sword and Shield. It's very clear that the Teal Mask is very story focused like the Crown Tundra was, with their abundance of legendary Pokemon and local folklore. And the same applies with the Indigo Disc being competitive hub, much like the Isle of Armor, in order to provide a training facility. All necessary for a Pokemon game, sure, but it's very clear that these DLCs are not DLCs at all. They're a cushion, much like the third versions were way back then. But instead of buying 2 games for $45 each, now you buy 1 game for $60 and a DLC for $30, so you pretty much spend the same money, with the difference being that you're now paying for what's necessarily a post-game, since the original entry has little to no content when it comes to the game itself because it's designed in such fashion. Granted, this is more so a current Pokemon problem than a DLC problem. If anything, the land of Kitakami felt more like a failsafe for the region of Johto, with the Blueberry Academy being, for the region of Unova. It was Pseudo Johto and Semi Unova, and therefore they have no need to be remade after you got Kanto with Let's Go and Sinnoh with BDSP for the Switch titles. And their focus can all go to a region that really went unfinished, that being Kalos with Pokemon Legends ZA. Gold and Silver felt complete, Black and White felt complete, X and Y did not. And the worst offender here is not even the multitude of legendary Pokemon, even with the Snake's Quest or whatever, as much as I personally don't like it, but yes, the fact that we get a copy of the Professor's book in the DLC, but that's not mandatory for the part of the story, it's just, a little fun side quest that we don't even know. We get a copy of the Professor's book from another timeline maybe, in order for that to make sense because we give him the Briar's White book, but we are locked out of the timeline from the time machine in Area 0. We go there, we cannot experience the worlds of the past or the future with or without the AI professor present at all. The worst part about this game is that we go to the Crystal Pool and Arven is not there with us at all. Every character in this game gets some sort of closure. Carmine, Kieran, Penny, Nemona, even Clavel. Like, everyone gets closure except for Arven. And this game, it's his story. Every Pokemon game has been, for recent time, we are not playing as the actual protagonist. Emma, Xenia, Lily, Hop, we are not the protagonist. Even you from Black 2 and White 2 if you really want to stretch it. But yeah, the DLCs for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they did not save the game, nor did they fix the game, because by the nature of the DLC, they are meant to add and to expand to an already existing product in an already existing world, despite of its quality, which they technically did, but it was all in features, not in narrative. The legends that already exist in Kitakami are so divorced from the mainland of Paldea they could be their own spin-off game. They offer nothing to the mainland of Generation 9. So, to sum it all up, my thoughts when it comes to DLC, they are sadly a necessary event Pokemon, and I wish that I don't need them in Generation 10 in order to feel like a story isn't completed without them. In my opinion, We as players should not be gatekept of a full narrative by a lousy paywall. I despise DLCs with a passion. Do they like that they are present? Yes. Do they need to be present? Absolutely not. They are only present because they refuse to complete a game in order to have a post-game, because they don't know how to write a story, so they don't know how to write an after-story.
The DLC for Scarlet and Violet, both the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc overall as a package, in my opinion significantly improved the overall gameplay of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It was improved from the Sword and Shield DLC in a couple ways, but mainly having the story connect through two different DLCs really helped make the story have an overall cohesive narrative. The introduction of Perrin, Carmine, Kieran, and Briar was one that really helped the cast of characters that we already knew so far in the game. Perrin and Briar don't really add much to the story. Briar's there really to wrap up the Terrapago story arc, and Perrin is really there to help give you some special Pokemon that you can't get anywhere else in the game. Out of all the major characters introduced there, those two feel the most disappointing. Briar especially, because it felt like she was going to be a significant part in the story, especially since she was related to Heath. Instead, she's really there just for exposition's sake. She represents a less drastic version of the Professor, Sada, or Turo that are so obsessed. She's able to at least see clearly when things go wrong. The story of Heath in general feels super incomplete, so I wish they would have used Briar as proxy in order to complete that story. However, I do like what they did at the very end of the DLC. While she doesn't do anything in the story itself, her importance in the story is immensely magnified, especially since later you find out that her book is the book that you give to the Professor to start their obsession and start this entire paradox of time travel, paradox Pokemon, and the insanity of Area Zero. Again, a lot of that can be attributed to you, the player character, but at least the story recognizes that she needed to do something important and allowed her to do something that really is significant to the story. Perrin, on the other hand, doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like she's there, like I said, just to give you special Pokemon. It's also in order to connect the previous game, Legends Arceus. She's clearly the descendant of Adaman, and while her story is one that I feel like more people can relate to, especially people who are creative that feel like they might lose their spark and feel like they have to see something or do something to get that inspiration again. But to me, I didn't feel that story was that special. It could have been told by anyone else. Having Perrin there just allows us to get the Blood Moon Ursaluna, which is a great Pokemon, but besides that, she doesn't really provide anything to the story. And it feels especially true in the Blueberry Academy, where once you have enough Pokemon in your Pokedex, she shows you pictures of where the remaining Paradox Beast or Sword of Justice are, and you just go catch them. And after that, nothing. I wish she got some sort of proper ending like Briar did. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But we also got great characters like Kieran and Carmine. Carmine's an interesting character. She clearly wants what's best for Kieran, but it also feels like her temper gets the best of her a lot. And that makes her very unlikable in the first DLC. It doesn't help that the game doesn't really allow you to make a choice of whether you want to tell Kieran the truth about Ogerpon or not, making it seem like Carmine is just lying just to lie. But I think by the second half of the first DLC, she really does chill out and becomes a good companion character. She helps get the truth out about Ogerpon and helps you fight the Loyal 3. So by the end of the DLC, she feels way more fleshed out. It is disappointing what they do with her in the second DLC. She's there just to fully worry about Kieran the whole time, including down at Area Zero. It feels like in the second DLC, the writers did her dirty, which actually makes her more likable to the fans because they want to root for her by this point in the game. That leads to Kieran, who is the most fleshed out character. While you understand his initial anger, and a lot of people even wanted to give him Ogerpon because of that in the first DLC, by the second DLC you can see that he has taken it too far. He's a bully to other kids, and it feels like his whole agenda throughout the second DLC is just to go against you for any reason he can find. That's heightened by the Blueberry Elite Four, especially Drayton, who really wants you to beat him. So by the end of the game, when he's humbled twice, the first time losing to you in the league and the second time failing to capture Terrapagos, it feels like he comes back to being more of a normal character. That's what makes the DLC so fun. On top of that, the atmosphere, especially in the Teal Mask and Kitakami, feels phenomenal. It really feels like you're in an old-time village. I really love that setting. While the Blueberry Academy doesn't have that much atmosphere, it is fun to get a lot of Unova references, including Unova music and Kids of Unova characters. And the game finally allowing you to fly at the very end of the DLC makes it all complete. Altogether, the story, the atmosphere of Kitakami, and the nostalgia of Blueberry really makes for a fun DLC that I really think improved the overall game of Scarlet and Violet.
Alright, now that you guys have heard everyone else's opinion, it's finally time for you guys to hear about mine. So, the hidden treasure of Area Zero. I think the DLC's biggest strength was the fact that it was able to tell a overarching compelling story when it came to Kieran. I think that was probably the best part about it, and I have to say I'm definitely biased towards the Indigo Disc because I'm a big Gen 5 fan, so getting that was like amazing for me, and I think it was really cool how some of the characters like Lacey and Drayton were descendants of other characters. I thought that was really, really cool. I really like the overall areas we got, being Kitakami and Blueberry Academy. I think Kitakami definitely had a better vibe, but Blueberry Academy was better to explore because it was bigger. I don't think we really needed these big open areas to make this DLC good, but I definitely appreciated it, and I think it was a huge step up exploration-wise from the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. Not that those were bad, I actually really like the Sword and Shield DLC, but just it's a big improvement from Generation 8 to Generation 9 when it comes to exploration. Another thing that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to these DLCs is the music. I think all the new music is actually really, really good. Especially the Terapagos battle theme. I don't know why, I just really, really like that battle theme, and I tend to listen to it on and off a lot. Maybe it's because of Pokemon Horizons. I don't really know. I think it's a really good battle theme, but I also really like the Kitakami theme, Kieran's battle theme, the Blueberry Academy battle theme, the Blueberry Academy just theme in general. I think the music in the DLC is phenomenal when it comes to the overall soundtrack of Scarlet and Violet, and Scarlet and Violet already has a really, really good soundtrack to begin with, so if I'm praising the music like this, then it's definitely something you want to keep in mind, because yeah, the music is really, really good. The one thing I have to say about the DLC, even 1 year later, is that I feel its biggest fault is not really fixing some of Scarlet and Violet's issues. And I'm mainly talking about performance. The DLC doesn't have nearly as many bugs as Scarlet and Violet does, but I feel like it released a year later, so I feel like at that point Pokemon should have been like, okay, the game did not release in a state that was good, that we liked, so while we're also making these DLCs, we should obviously focus on the performance as well. But they don't do that. Kitakami and Blueberry Academy lag just as much as base Scarlet and Violet do, and it really takes me out of the immersion of the game. Generation 9 had a lot of potential, and I just find it so forgettable at times because, one, the game didn't really work, and two, I feel like Pokemon didn't put the effort into making it super impactful because the game has so many of these glaring issues. And while the DLCs don't have as many, which in my opinion makes them stand out more than the actual game itself, it's still there, and you can still find them, and personally I don't like that, and I think they should have put some more emphasis on fixing the performance, because in my opinion then it would have been a much better DLC expansion pass. But overall, I really like the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero. It introduced some amazing Pokemon, some amazing characters, awesome environments, and of course had a really cool soundtrack. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing all of our thoughts on the DLC a year later. This video wasn't anything special, but I thought it would be fun to get some of my friends together and we can all really just talk about this DLC because we've had enough time to reflect on it. With that being said, to enjoy even more high quality Pokemon content, check out the videos on screen right now.